What's good, y'all? Hope you're having a good day today, right? Hope everything's going well. I thought I mentioned before going into the main video that we're giving out a 30% discount code for both of my online courses, the Ponziani Opening and the Hippopotamus Defense. If you're interested in either of these courses or both, all you got to do is go down to the description below or the pinned comment, plug in the discount code June 2024, and you will receive 30% off of the course or courses that you purchase. Okay. I put a lot of work into both of these courses. Dozens have gotten the Ponziani, hundreds have gotten the Hippo Defense course, and many have told me that they enjoyed it. I really think that both the Ponziani and the Hippo are two of the most underrated options that a chess player can go with from either side. Right now, obviously, the Hippo, it's more white or black. You can do it from either side. The Ponziani is a very E4 based opening. But the Ponziani has a ton of opening traps, and it works. I mean, it's a sound opening, sound option, and many players just don't know what the heck to do with it. So, again, thought I mentioned that. And remember, if you're interested in getting this 30% off sale, you got to get it done and get one of those courses or both before the end of the month. Let's head back to the video. Today's video is for those of you that play the move of E4 and are trying to find a response against the Scandinavian Defense with D5. Now, there's only 3 moves for black when we play the move E4. There's only 3 immediate options that black can play that directly put pressure on E4. Okay, now one of those is the move of F5. Is this move good? No, we just take it. Okay, F5's the Duras Gambit. Terrible option for black. One good option for black that immediately puts pressure on that pawn is Knight F6 with the Alekhine defense. The only other move that does that, D5. Which is what we're covering in today's video. Now, before I get into my favorite option against the Scandinavian Defense, which is only played, this move that we're about to cover, it's only played 6% of games in online chess. So your opponent's probably not going to be very well prepared for it, and it's going to give you that advantage in prep. On top of that, this move, when played correctly, performs extremely well. So stick around to the end of the video so that you can get the idea covered. But first off, we're going to cover an opening for black, and it's going to tie in directly. Okay, so we have that move E4 as we've covered. There's only a few moves here for black that immediately put pressure on the pawn on E4. Now, one move that black can play, let's flip the board real quick, is this move of Knight C6 with the Nimzowitsch Defense. Okay, so the Nimzowitsch Defense is it's actually a very strong option for black. It's not played very often. I mean, there's a lot of moves that we see all the time on a much more regular basis. Moves like E5, moves like E6 with the French, the Pierts, the Scandinavian, the Carl-Con, the Sicilian. But Knight C6 is a good move. And against the move of D4, I've covered this on my channel. We have the Scandinavian variation with D5, and we also have the Kennedy variation with E5. And this is my favorite move to play. Now here, white can take on E5, and from that point, there's different moves that you could go with. One of them is playing this move of D6. You could also just take the pawn right back. But most of the time, white plays D5, just kicking our knight around. Now, in the Kennedy variation of the Nimzowitsch Defense, we got to play Knight CE7 and Knight G6. Pretty simple. By the way, all the moves that you're about to see from white are the most common. Okay, if we're looking at online chess, every single move here, I'm not just picking moves that are bad for white. I'm picking the most common moves that you're going to see. Oftentimes, white will play C4, just trying to gain more space. Notice when we do get our knight kicked, we're throwing that knight to G6 as fast as we possibly can. And once we do that, the next order of business is to get our bishop an active square. In this case, we can play bishop C5. If our opponent took that away, all right, bishop B4 is a good option to go with. But in this case, okay, knight F3, we can play knight F6. Notice we are threatening knight G4, okay, doubling up on that pawn on F2. And something like bishop D3, we can play A5. The purpose of A5 is two-sided. First off, we're looking to kind of slow down white's queenside chances with A3 and B4 because we already have that square covered. And more importantly, we're giving our bishop an escape square in case white tries to trap it. So, I mean, let's say white castles, we play D6. If a move like knight A4, our bishop's good. We're not going to lose the bishop pair there. Of course, we could see a move like bishop E3, but we're not going to give up our bishop. This is very strong, by the way. I mean, directly, eyeing the king on G1 for a knight. Now, if we see something like A3, we're now going to castle. And this is a very, I love this position for black. I'll just be honest. The Kennedy variation of the Nimzowitsch Defense. It gets very good results. I've won a ton of games with it, yeah, I mean, it just leads to a really nice game. Very straightforward game plan. We're really eyeing the square on f4. Okay, we're looking to play a move like knight h5 and knight f4. For example, let's say something like rook b1. Let's play knight h5. Okay, we're going to try to throw a knight into f4, and geometrically, if we're black, a knight on f4 just puts a ton of pressure on white's side of the board, on the king side, and white's going to be feeling it a little bit. If you play g3, you're weakening your light squares, which our bishop is already eyeing. And if you take on e5, I've also ran into this, white going, you know what, I'm going to sack a piece for a pawn, and then I'm going to win the knight on h5. You did that, but your bishop on d3 is now hanging. Okay, we could take it right away. We could also play bishop g4. If you want to save your queen, you got to play queen g5. Now we trade it, then take the bishop off. We're in the endgame, and we're up a piece for a pawn. We're winning this. Going back to the move castling kingside, maybe white doesn't want us to just be able to throw a knight into f4, right, with f5 breaks at some point. They don't want to play a move like g3, weakening their position. So we see a move like bishop g5. Well, now we play h6. And if you decide to take the knight, our queen captures back, we're still looking at f4. Sure, we don't have two knights anymore, but you don't have a dark squared bishop now. So, I mean, the engine loves this position for black. Black performs, again, extremely well in this line. If a move like rook b1, let's just throw the knight right in there. If b4, we can take. This move has never been found in online chess from black, but it's the move of rook a3, very strong. Now, by the way, if you missed this and you play a move like bishop b6 as an example, still very strong. Extremely active knight, active queen. Bishop on c8 hasn't even moved, but it's eyed towards the king side of the board. And we have a dark squared bishop eyeing the king on g1. But rook a3 is just nasty. We're looking towards the knight. If the knight runs, the bishop is going to fall. I mean, if you want to take our bishop, we'll take your knight. The bishop on d3 is under attack. Let's say you defend your knight. Knight takes g2 is the engine move here. We're now threatening to take the knight on f3 with our queen. I mean, we're just breaking open this king side. And if you take back with the king, we have bishop h3 with check. Okay, if you want to bring the king to either of those squares, we're going to take on f3, looking to mate on g2 pretty quickly. If king g3, we're gonna check and make you take the bishop. And if you take the bishop right away, okay, we take your knight. And then one more move, on move 18, this game is over. Notice how quickly the Nimzowitsch Defense Kennedy Variation type style can absolutely just blast open white's king side once we're fully developed and we're trying to get our knight to that f4 square. I mean, it's just a great game. Okay, so that kind of covers what the heck the Nimzowitsch Defense, right? Followed by e5 with the Kennedy Variation is, right? If you see d5, we're going to play knight e7, throw that knight over to g6, activate our bishop, give our bishop some breathing room, keep developing, and castle kingside, and eventually look to bring one of our knights to f4. And if you stop that, well, now you've weakened g4, h3, g2, etc. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. Now, many of you are probably thinking, if you're still here, by the way, if you still are watching, thank you for sticking around. Many of you might be wondering, okay, wait, you in the thumbnail, in the title, you kept, you were pointing towards us having a good chess opening option against the Scandinavian Defense. Where is it? Well, the whole reason I showed you that is because here against the move of d5, how can we play the Kennedy Variation? How can we play a Nimzowitsch Defense type style from the white side? By playing knight c3. Okay, and we're going to go over this in a moment, but this is something I challenge you guys with. Are there any openings that you like for black? Let's say you like the Karl Kahn. Let's say you like playing c6 and d5. A lot of players play that. Anatoly Karpov, right? Sam Shanklin. There's a ton of players that we can name off. Elite GM players that have had huge success with the Karl Kahn. It's a staple of chess opening theory. But hardly anyone knows what the Saragossa opening is. In fact, if you play the move of c3, people are going to tell you that you're playing just an off-ball, weird, kind of dubious opening. What? Wait, hold on a second. For black, we're moving our queen's, bishop's, pawn up one to support the central move of d5. From white, why is this bad? It's not. Okay. That's my opinion. I mean, if you're going to sit there and say that the Carl Khan's a great opening, why wouldn't the Saragossa? Why not? Okay. Now, again, in the Nimzowitsch for black, right, we see that queen knight come out, followed by the king pawn move up, kind of letting the opponent kick our knight around. We're doing the same thing here against the Scandinavian. We're playing knight c3, and then this is how I stumbled across this. I was playing the Nimzowitsch defense as black, having great success with it. And then I go, wait a second, I can do the same exact thing against the Scandinavian. I can play a Nimzowitsch defense against the Scandinavian defense, right? Now, I can already, hear the comments coming in going, you're not the one to discover this. This has been played thousands of times online, blah, 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 blah. I understand. Okay, but this is how I discovered it. And a lot of you guys have actually went on the channel before and went, oh my gosh, I was playing the Hippo without even knowing it existed. I was playing this and that. I made this opening up, and I guess it's a real opening, right? So this move of knight c3 and this whole technique here doesn't have an official name from the white side, but we're really just playing, again, a Kennedy variation from the white side. What are the most popular moves here that we see from black? Okay, well, d4. And by the way, your opponent, they only see this 6% of the time, guys. Not very common. Usually they see takes. Usually they see e5. Usually they see something like d4. But knight c3, that's just straight up rare. Okay, they don't see that every day. Now, if your opponent wants to take, now you have an interesting decision to make, right? I mean, you could play a move like d3 if you want, offering up another pawn, seeing if they'll take and give you more development, or you could just take the pawn back. We're just playing chess now. We're just playing chess. You're out of a Scandinavian type position. Everything's fine. It is interesting. I have played this, and I recently had someone play queen d5 against me, and in that game I played knight c3, and now we're back to a normal Scandi. We just threw a few more moves in there, right? Because usually we take and then play knight c3 right away. In this case, we played knight c3, took, got attacked, went back. We're in the same position, okay? But if you do see something like queen d5 there, you don't have to play knight c3, okay? You could play something like d3 if you want to, although knight c3 is probably a good option here. But again, even after d takes e4, you don't have to take with the knight if you don't want to. d3 is a valid option here. And if black does take that, I would probably recommend taking with the bishop. You have two pieces developed. Black has none. You can play a move here like knight f3, maybe drop the bishop on g5, look to castle queenside quickly, eye up that queen on d8, and you're going to have a fun game ahead. But most of the time, if you look at online chess, d4 is played. I'm going to show you all the most common moves from black. It's kind of funny. They play it the same exact way that white plays it against the Nimzowitsch. We see e5. c5 is the most popular move here. It just is. Bishop c4, knight c6, knight f3. The most popular move here for black is knight f6 in online chess, and this is a huge mistake because we do have the move of knight g5. I mean, that pawn on f7 is just helpless. Okay. It's attacked twice. You can't defend it. Can't defend it well. I mean, if you want to bring the queen over or something, we don't really care. We're just going to take it right out. If something like b5, well, why not take on f7, check the king, make that king move? If something like bishop e6, you could either take with the bishop and then finish out with the knight. That's very playable. The engine actually likes us taking with the knight and then the bishop. And when our bishop gets attacked, we have a couple of different options here. I mean, bishop d5 is good. Moving the bishop to b3 is a good option. c4 is playable. Bishop h3 is a move that Stockfish is fond of, just slicing and dicing. And this bishop's pretty untouchable. It's kind of in a weird spot, but we are up a pawn. If something like g6, we can play d3. We can look towards castling kingside. We have the bishop pair. Our opponent doesn't. And we simply just have a better game right now. We just do. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just a great game. And after knight f3, let's say our opponent doesn't play a move like this, and let's say they see that knight g5 idea, so they play h6. Okay, a4. We're playing this like a Nimzowitsch defense. We're playing d3. We're castling kingside. We're playing knight h4. We're looking to play knight f5. If you play g6 here, thank you for the pawn on h6 with the attacking game. And again, if you take on e4, we capture back. You take our knight, but we can just take your bishop. We're up a piece for a pawn here, and white with a 1 game. Okay, so just remember that. Think about the openings that you like playing for black. Just think about it. What openings do I like playing for black? You can play that from the white side. You can. If you like playing the French defenses black, you can play e3. If you like the Carl Khan, you can play c3. If you like the Pierce, D3 is a solid option. If you like the check Pierce, you can play D3, Knight F3, C3. You can do the same exact kind of position, but from the white side, right? And I understand that a lot of players, they feel like as white, they want to take control of the center, and as black, they're not, they feel like as black, they like more of a defensive game, but then for white, they feel like they need to attack. I don't feel like that personally. Like, I've never felt like that. But I have heard many players say, yeah, as white, I don't feel like I can just sit there and play C3 and move one. I understand that, but it is something to think about, specifically when you're seeing a position like this, right? Just reverse it for a second. Oh wait, as black, if you like the Nimzowitsch Defense Kennedy Variation, why not play Knight C3? Why not? Right? I mean, you're going to get this kind of position where you throw the knight over to G3 really quickly, activate your bishop, develop your knights, and this position, this line here for white performs again extremely well. Okay, so when I'm looking at opening theory, I'm not just looking at what's played the most, but what's performing well, right? If I'm looking at a bunch of moves and they're all pretty much even or maybe slightly worse for me or even slightly better, but then all of a sudden I see a move that's been played at a pretty good sample size that is just crushing, well, look into it. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe the opponent just falls for tricks and traps all the time, or maybe it's actually good. Okay, let me know what you think of this Knight C3 move down below. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Nimzowitsch Defense player and you play the Kennedy Variation, it's kind of hard to argue against playing that, unless there's another line that you like playing more. Of course, you could play something like D4 with the Blackmar Gambit. There's a lot of stuff that you could go with, but anyways, let me know what you think of this specific line down below against the Scandinavian, taking your opponent out of their prep. Also, let me know as well, like, are there any openings that you like for black that you can kind of replicate from the white side? And if you're not replicating it, why not? It doesn't mean you need to, but it is something to think about. I'll see y'all in the next one. What's up, y'all? Solomon here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate y'all a ton. And if you haven't subscribed before, just a quick reminder, to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell as well. If you're wanting more content like this to help you improve in your game and all that kind of stuff. And real quickly as well, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of June in 2024. I appreciate y'all a ton. You guys are helping me do this full time. And if you haven't checked it out before, I highly recommend that you go check out some of the benefits that you gain by becoming a member. And I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.